because they know that when they invite all these leaders to come for the spring meeting of the IMF, they will take over all the hotels, and the hotels are feeding the American economy. When you have an Olympics, of course, they will never bring it here because they know we will never have infrastructure that can support the Olympics or the World Cup, because of the kind of leaders they put, and they're in love with them. Anytime they have these dictators, oh man, they are probably the ones who call Babangida aside and said, look, we want to be giving you loans. You're a nice guy. You want to turn on just call yourself a president, change your nomenclature so that it looks good, and it looks good, and then start changing your uniform too. And then they arranged for a meeting for him to meet with the Queen of England, and the Queen of England was riding on a chariot on the streets of London, and Babangida was busy killing his opponents here, and they pretended as if they didn't know, give him red carpet reception. Now we can't find this loot, but the loot is there. It's there in their banks. It's there in Switzerland. Yeah. And in France. And I heard in Germany too.
Yeah, there. Thank you very much, Omoyele Sowore. Well said. In fact, we have been enlightened this morning, this afternoon, about the ongoings and so many things that we never knew before. Now, before I throw the question, another question out to the forum, there's one thing that baffles everyone, and it's about this youth involvement in politics. During one of my recent researches, I came across an article which has been published in one of the world reputable journals. I'm going to share this article with you now. Please just pay attention to the highlighted spots on that. I want to know if Nigeria is not matured enough. This is what it says. Please just have a look. You can take time to read, but the highlighted area is where I'm concerned. The logistic regression results suggest that political participation among young people is determined by the democratic maturity of the country they live in. The logistic regression model suggests that the political participation among young people is not universal in any democracy, but varies with the age of democracy. Please, Omoyele, enlighten us. What's your take? What's your take on this?
This is hobbies. When I mean hobbies, we don't need to keep deceiving ourselves. What is the percentage of young people in Nigeria that constitutes the entire population? Almost 70% of people are below the age of 30. What is so difficult to understand about democracy that people don't know how to do it, that they don't participate? Young people are participating, but they are suppressing them. They are suppressing their participation because they don't allow free and fair elections to happen. So what do? When there's a free and fair election in 1993, Abiola won, and you cancelled it, and you rally the old people, traditional rulers, some of the people in the media, to support that daylight robbery and say that, Nigeria is not matured, we are not ready, Meanwhile, the same Nigeria that you claim is not matured for democracy is matured to drive the best cars. We don't have problem driving a Rolls Royce, even though it's a complex car, right? We don't have problem, getting private jets for ourselves, but we are not matured for democracy. We don't have a problem even marrying from outside the country people whose language we don't understand. We don't have a problem, using facilities from the same, Western part of the world that brought us democracy. But when it's time for democracy, because it benefits the majority, at least according to its creed, we say that we are not matured. It's not, it's not the age of democracy. We are not practicing democracy in Nigeria. I've said it several times that we are practicing a brand of democracy known as morontocracy. That is, government for morons by morons. That's what we are practicing. When you have morons take over your governance space, you cannot call that democracy. Until we purge the morons out of the system, you'll be surprised how great Nigerian youths are at understanding how things work. The same Nigerian youth, some of them that you think doesn't understand democracy, they can scam Westerners out of their life savings. In the name of Yahoo Yahoo. Like I said, they don't understand democracy. They don't understand democracy. But the moment you suppress them and move them away from what is their entitlement, of course, they look for other ways of surviving. And I'm not in any way glorifying any crime, economic crime or digital crime, committed by our youth. They're mostly driven there because they are deprived of the little things they need. This lockdown, which you mentioned when we started this program, how it has exposed us. Look at small countries like Ghana. I'm not going even beyond the continent of Africa. How they are providing support, how they are fighting the pandemic. In our own country, we would not even have had a pandemic reach us were it not for the selfish leaders who were waiting for the so-called people you say don't understand democracy. Most of them were abroad. They're going to school abroad, sending their children, they've been to hospital. So they had to keep the Nigerian border open for 1 month so that all of them could return. By the time they returned, they brought back Corona to Nigeria. Had we locked our gates, like most serious countries did, after the first Italian case came, and we have shut down the airline business, shut down our borders as it is required of us without being selfish and wicked, we would not have had Corona. At least not on the scale that we have it now. Because after the guy recovered, the only other person that was infected was another person in the hospital where he was. That person recovered too. Nigeria was free of Corona. But the problem was the leadership in Nigeria, or the rulers of Nigeria, had to keep the borders open so that Buhari's daughter could return from London. Abba Kyari could return from the contract negotiations he went for. Several governors who don't stay in the country could return. That was what put Nigeria in the trouble that it's in. Otherwise, by now, we would have had minimal impact from the Corona pandemic.
Yes, thank you very much, Omoyele. In fact, enough, well said there. And to be honest with you, I have been very much enlightened with our conversations this afternoon. Now, before I go, one last one. Do you think the pandemic has exposed the incompetencies of this government? Because I watched on video the palliative measures being provided to people in areas like Agege, Ifakwan, all those areas, where like a loaf of bread for a whole street. And a cup of rice for 10 families. What's your take on this? If you were to be the policy maker or the policy implementer, what would you do different here?
Look, if I had been elected in 2019, the pandemic would have met Nigeria with a lot of solid structures. One of it is that we were going to establish a social security system as soon as we came to office. We have enough data in place already. You just need to harvest this data and create them and make them secure. In fact, Nigeria as a nation is the country that abuses data the most. There is a data abuse of our citizens. Anywhere you go, everybody's trying to collect your data. There's about data from the bank, from the passport office, from INEC, from phone companies, the national identities scheme, schools. There's data everywhere. In fact, we're just harvesting data in a way that abuses the privacy of our citizens, because you can't just, you can imagine that phone companies will just take your fingerprints and just take your data. Nobody knows what they're doing with it, whether they're selling it or giving it to somebody. We don't know. So I would have curated all this data, have at least information about nothing less than 80% of the populace in less than 3 to 4 or 5 months. So by the time pandemic came, we would have been able to tell who has a job, who doesn't have a job in the system, who is most vulnerable, where they are located. I would have deployed resources to go to those places. It's not resources in terms of handout. We need to have long-term resources for dealing with this, hospitals, nurses. I did say to people when we were campaigning that part of our plan was to hire 160,000 nurses a year. And by the time we're done with 4 years tenure, we would have had over 600 nurses across the country. Some people laugh at me. In fact, when I said it recently, they said it's not possible because you have to train nurses in 4 years, 5 years, because people think that governance is rocket science. In fact, it is the job of some Nigerians to claim that it's impossible to govern Nigeria. That is their own claim to fame. They come on TV all the time. I don't know where they get them from. They are on the internet. They are always subjecting, any logical solution to Nigeria's problem to some major irrationality, just to prove that it's not possible to govern Nigeria. And if that's the case, we might as well just throw up our hands. If you say you want to hire nurses, say, how are you going to pay for it? But we have a governor who said 3 days ago, I think it was governor of Abia, that he blew 38 billion naira in 8 years just from security votes alone. Just sitting out. Imagine if you pay 100,000 naira to workers in all these essential areas, divide that by 38 billion, just for Abia State alone. Do you know how many people would have been sustained over the years? But look at our senators, and nobody has ever disputed my position, or House of Rep members. They earn 14 million naira per month. They are the highest paid loafers in the world. Yeah. But what do they give in return? Nothing. But if you are a worker in Nigeria, for you to make 14 million naira, you must have worked for 37 years in the civil service. That's if you are receiving 100,000 per month. Do the calculation. But the truth I'm telling you is that we were heavily exposed, but there's nothing new. We weren't exposed more than we have always been exposed. Maybe we're just exposed to the realities of the world. People who never cared about this issue suddenly found themselves exposed because they had nowhere to run to. If this pandemic was such that Nigerians could just travel to London and go and stay there until the pandemic is over, there will be nobody left among the elites in Nigeria. About 100,000 of them would have distributed themselves around the world, just fly out, and they'll be calling home their drivers and their cooks and say, has the pandemic gone? If it's gone, maybe I can come back next month. But the only reason why it sounded like we've been exposed this time is they had nowhere to run to. No country in the world was open. All borders were closed against even the richest, the most powerful.
Thank you for that. I think someone wants to say something earlier.
Okay. My name is Tony Manero. I'm calling from Lagos in Nigeria. All right.
Thank you.
So, Omoyele, I've been a fan of you. I've watched you since the days of the Aluta struggle. We're about this age. I'm a very passionate person, politically and otherwise. Now, all this talk is all good, and I'm a member of this. I got beaten up the other time when we tried to stop the toll gate matter, so I've been in the struggle to understand. Now, one of the problems I see, or one of the problems I've encountered, is how to synthesize the very people we try to liberate, the youths, the people that are in charge of the future. Many of them don't seem to understand these things that we're trying to say, that the future belongs to us. We cannot keep selling our votes. We cannot keep following these guys. We cannot keep lying down and allowing them matches. So how do we, because it's difficult to tell the man under the bridge here that the future belongs to you when he tells you, when he farabale, no. I had that 5,000 naira means a lot to him. That woman, they don't understand these things. How do we synthesize these people to the extent where they are politically liberated, they are active, they are aware enough to make that move, that revolutionary move that would tilt this power to the people? How do we do it?
You see, I mentioned something earlier that is a very simple tool, right? I use social media as a measure of how are we responding to the things that bother us. You have a Facebook page, right? I'm sure. And I can almost swear that you are active on Twitter. You talk like one of us, the Twitterati, right? But the question is, how many friends do you have comes out to support a good position, a good idea, a good cause? Even though you drink beer with them from
not a lot. Not a lot.
Exactly.
Not a lot, my brother. Not a lot.
Until we start holding those our friends, so the ones, wherever you have your own sphere of influence, you must hold people to account on this score. Until we start doing that, I'm telling you, just start, do this experiment, because
Omoyele,
it made a difference for me.
Let me tell you, let me give you my own experience.
Okay, go ahead.
My experience in 2015, oh no, sorry, 2014, when Buhari came up. At that time, I know you were supporting Buhari, but now let's not crucify you. But when Buhari came up, I used to live in an estate where I had major influence, where the people controlling the estate. So I, on my own, I don't belong to a political party, but because I know the antecedents of Major General Buhari, and I know the antecedents of Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, I called people and said, listen, Jonathan might not seem to be a very bright or sellable guy, but he's a better choice than this guy. And we had banters upon banters upon banters. So it got to an extent where I started creating enemies among supposed enlightened, educated young men and women in an estate, in a middle, let's just say a middle class estate. You understand? And I was surprised the way these guys were reacting and thinking they were not seeing the picture. So if these guys cannot see the picture, how do you expect Tafik under the bridge or Surat in markets to see that picture? That's what I'm saying. When the average person is only telling you that is it that one that will put food on my table? I beg you, let them do that one. When everybody for himself, everybody's trying to fight for himself. How? There must be something. There must be some way. There must be a measure or like a system.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tony Manero. I know how passionate you are. You are just like myself. We're so passionate about our country, passionate about the ongoings, and this was meant to be a 25 minutes with Omoyele Sowore. It's running to 1 hour now. I will take the last one from a man who has been quiet all this while, and that's Mr. Ifashegun. Mr. Ifashegun, you are now unmuted. I'll take the last one from you, sir. Thank you.
I thought you were going to take the last one from a woman. Where are they?
we seem not to have the woman here at the moment. Perhaps they are busy managing the home. But okay, I'm trying to unmute you, Mr. Ifashegun, but I seem to be finding it difficult. I cannot unmute you here. I'm finding it very difficult to unmute you. Let me try somewhere else. Just 1 second. Okay, Mr. Ifashegun, you are on now.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Mine's gonna be more like of a contribution on. I'm very, very grateful to be on this platform, and you see, you've all made wonderful contribution, Mr. Sowore. I really appreciate you. You've said the problem of Nigerians. Mr. Tony, if you remember, you and I used to live in that same close estate. I'm in England at the moment, and I will be back in Nigeria after the lockdown.
Yeah, I remember you. Yeah, good. I remember you, bro.
That's it, man. Now, what I want to say is we have wonderful ideas how to liberate our people. But like you rightly said, Tony, the average man on the corner of the street don't understand what is going on in Nigeria. All they hear is there's 1 billion somewhere, there's 300 billion somewhere, somebody has told 600 billion. They do not understand how this process happened. Now, Mr. Sowore, you have said a lot, and I've always been a fan of you. I've always been following you. I've always been a great fan. But I will only contribute. Can we try as much as possible to try and communicate with our people in their native language? It makes a lot of sense. And like Tony said, we have educated illiterates. They are educated. They have all the degrees in the world you can imagine. But do you understand? You communicate with them for 30 minutes. They do not understand what you're talking about in that 30 minutes.
Yes.
I go back and speak to them in our native language that's got gravity that they understand. Don't lie to people. You go to the Igbo people, speak to them in their Igbo language. Imam like this, Madugad, Magudawola. You speak to them in the language they understand. Then we will achieve this revolution that you are talking about. And people like us will follow you. Tony can testify to me. We will follow you. But when we have people that all they speak is big grammars. And then the people that follow me, I'm an Ifa priest. I've got thousands of Ifa priest devotees who I lecture on weekly and monthly basis everywhere across Yoruba nation. They're ready to follow. But do you think if I ask you to come and meet them and then you start speaking plenty English, would they listen to you, Mr. Sowore?
Yeah,
So we need to communicate with our people in a language that they understand. You will be surprised if you have an Hausa team, somebody who can speak Hausa properly and that can say proverbs in Hausa to the Hausa people. You will be surprised the turnout, the outcome you're going to get in the north. English language is not helping us.
My brother, I understand completely and I agree with you. In fact, the people who are holding Nigeria back today, they have succeeded in doing something that we don't do. They are reaching people in the language they understand. You understand? The Tinubus of this world, they have their Yoruba translators. They have Ewi exponents. They have all kinds of people drumming it down to the grassroots. In languages that people understand, proverbs, including body language. Yoruba is a language that uses the body a lot as well. Mm-hmm. The same thing with Igbos, Hausas, But what we lack, and this is where I will want us to deal with resources. What we lack and where the diaspora must come in is with resources, because I don't want a situation where we don't understand that we need some resources. And the diaspora that ships 50 billion naira to these crazy people every year, because they send in 50 billion naira to the Nigerian economy every year, the people in the diaspora, all of the diaspora, through Western Union or whatever union you use, and they use it for whatever they like, steal it. But our diaspora people have not come to the understanding that to change it, they have to channel some of that resource, not to me, but it could be just as you are saying. Maybe someone in the diaspora can support the Ifa priests who want to become revolutionaries. We can have some people who can support the Igbo for revolutionary and they speak in Igbo. These Hausa people you are talking about, I have often said it. My experience first when I went to do service and when I went to campaign is that when Hausa people say they believe in something, they are different too. They will stand there. If you kill them, the more you kill, the more they come out. Their conviction level is serious. Of course, it is because they still use that transistor radio, BBC Hausa service, VOA Hausa service, Deutsche Welle Hausa service. The BBC Yoruba service is dying as we speak now. They just started it a few years ago because Yoruba people are busy on Twitter and Facebook trying to tell you who speaks the Queen English the best, picking you apart because you had a typographical error in English or not Yoruba. The same thing with Igbos, right? They're there trying to speak big grammar and abandoning their own cultural work. But the Hausas have remained very cool. If you go to a Hausa group, Facebook, Yahoo group, they write in fluent Hausa.
Hausa, yeah.
Yes. If you go to a Yoruba group, if you write Yoruba there, they will say, can you come and repeat it? Can you come and explain this in English? As if they don't understand Yoruba, because we have not used that language as a method of communication. It has become, a language in the museum. When I was in secondary school, our teachers used to write on the billboard, vernacular speaking is totally prohibited. What is vernacular? Yoruba language. You understand? Anyway, so I'm saying I'm breaking this thing down to you just so as to tell you how much I understand it. But it requires resources. There was a guy recently who was ranting. He was just ranting on Twitter. I don't even know his whereabouts. He was ranting on Facebook. One guy was calling for a revolution. I don't know if you saw him. It's about 3 weeks ago. But why the thing was so effective? Everything he said was repeated in Hausa language, not Yoruba, not Igbo. Because he knew that Igbos understood English, Yoruba understood English, but the Hausas that he needs to really rile up, they understand Hausa language. The Hausa language has its own intonation, it has its own nuances that people understand when you speak. It's different from when you say the same thing in English. So I totally agree with you, and these are resources we must bring onto our struggle for liberation. So I'm just saying your contribution is kosher. Completely, and it's something we will consider. This is part of what I think about every day, but don't have the capacity. But you know, we have to just pay attention to it. That the woman who is selling, you know, on the street corner who doesn't speak English, you know, I find the Edo language to be also an interesting language that, you know, as much as they travel far and wide, they still preserve communicating in Edo, the Benin language. How do we reach all those women who speak that? And quite honestly, the moment we can reach just 2% of our population with this message that we have, the job is done. Job is done.
Well, thank you very much, Omoyele Sowore. Before we let you go, how is Madam and the children in America? Are you hearing from them?
They're good. We communicate. We are now a digital family, so until we unite in person. But we're in touch, and they are going through the whole global pandemic as well. Just keeping all of them in our prayers and supporting each other on both sides of the Atlantic. You know, they live in the New York area. New York, New Jersey had the worst cases when the pandemic started. So far, I'm glad they're doing well, and they've been holding out very well too. You know, my wife became a more revolutionary person than I thought I married.
Yeah, she was all out there when you were in detention.
And this is the reason why I'm saying that we have way more than the number of people we think are supporting us. People are just waking up gradually. You know, my wife has never spoken politics to me before. He knows that I'm a rascal. You know, she knows that. You know,
political rascal.
But I was, yes.
We all are.
But when she stood up, I was in detention, and they would bring her, you know, video recordings to me in the DSS. People was like, they didn't even know I was married. You know, so if someone like my wife could have been influenced by my political views and activities, you can imagine how many people are out there. So each time you have a radically, you know, toned person, you also have a wife who is listening in, who you may not even know is more radical than you until the moment try them out.
What was your experience there? It's not the first time you've been locked up, Omoyele, since 1989.
It was my 9th and 10th time being locked up. But this
I remember 89, 1991.
Yeah. In the 90s, for those who attended, who went to university,
of course,
you know, we used to go to prison, jail every other.
I remember very well.
But this is the longest and the most cruel to which I've been subjected. Well, you know, one of the most cruel, because in the past I've been tortured as well. But, you know, I was put in a solitary confinement, you know, 23 hours every day. I had no contact with the outside world, no radio, no TV, no phone. Sometimes I would, you know, this is how you know that the world has changed a lot. Sometimes I would feel like my phone is ringing and I'll be running around the cell only to find out that, oh, I don't have access to phones. At the end of my phone, you know, it's just like our body has become conditioned to think that, you know, phone, you know, if you don't have access to a phone in 6 weeks, in 2 weeks, your body starts ringing like a phone. You know, I'll tell you that. So, and look, there's a difference between going to jail in 1990s and now, because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the kind of technological reach we have now. So it's even harder now because of how quickly you miss out on so many things. But, you know, look, the moment I was picked up and I knew that this was going to be a long trip, I just conditioned my mind to be ready for the worst. And, you know, they were hoping that I would break down, and they tried several things. They even sent a delegation to me in jail to ask me to pipe low, you know, apologize to the government for what I did. I said, yeah, you know, apologize. So you guys are the ones who will apologize, because we'll end up writing your obituaries anyway. So yeah. So it's something. It's a sin of the mind. If you can be in prison, you can be in jail physically, but if you don't put your mind in jail, you're a free man.
Yes,
and that's what I experienced. Yeah.
You are absolutely right. Now, to round everything up, thank you guys for coming on, everybody. Well done. And this is going to be.
Can I make a simple request before you go, please?
Yes, please.
There's a way all the participants, you know, I know someone later I have your number, but if you can resend all your numbers, especially WhatsApp, so that we can continue the conversation beyond now. I really appreciate it. I appreciated all of you that came on board, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to exchange ideas and views with me.